I'm Katie Hacker, your host, and joining me today is Rita Pannulla. In the next 30 minutes, we're going to learn a whole new repertoire of techniques combined in one necklace. What are we going to do first?
Everything.
Everything all
We're
at
metal
once.
stamping today. So what we're going to start off with is texturing.
Okay.
So we're going to use a ball peen head. What you're going to do, you're just going to feel a comfortable spot with your finger. Put that, I like to use the end of the blank. You're going to take your texture hammer, and you're going to lightly texture the entire disc. I like getting that pattern as close as possible together, so it gives a really nice ripple effect.
And what kind of metal are you using there?
So right here, we're using an aluminum. It's a soft strike.
So that means it's going to take a really nice
impression. Yeah, so it takes a really nice impression. So it kind of looks like a bunch of diamond cuts in the aluminum and really makes it shine and pop.
And do you have to have a special kind of hammer for that?
You need a ball peen hammer or any kind of texture head. I mean, there's a lot of different textures out there, but this is definitely by far my favorite, which is the ball peen head. And then you're just gonna finish it up right down. You wanna make sure that when you are texturing and you're close to your holes, right here, is that you don't hit them very hard because they tend to spread the metal and make the holes smaller.
So you're using a pretty light touch, would you say?
Yes, very, not very aggressive, but I would say medium.
Okay. And somebody told me once that you should always hold your elbow in when you're hammering.
You should always hold your hand, yes. Agreed.
And that has to do with, I guess, the impression that you're making.
Right. So they're really nice and close together. With the strike that you have, it actually alleviates the pain that in your arm as well. So especially if it's a constant motion that you're doing to create a piece.
Okay.
Okay. Then we're going to move on to our H initial. So this is a 9.5 stamp, and when you're metal stamping and you're using bigger stamps, you hit it more than once. It's something called the tap and tilt method. So what you're going to do is you're going to put that down, center it to the best of your ability. You want to really anchor when you're metal stamping. You want to anchor your hand at the bottom of that block, okay, and press into the metal with your stamp. Then you're going to hit it once you feel that you're nice and stable. Then you're going to bring it back, tilt it forward, tilt it to one side, other side, and then bring it back right in the center. And that's going to make sure that you have a nice and even impression all around.
And you don't have to worry about it blurring at all?
You don't have to worry about it blowing at all because you're putting pressure on the stamp. So when you're putting pressure on that stamp, you're actually pushing it into that metal.
And you're using a pre-made disc.
So I'm using a pre-made disc. These I liked because they are deboard already and they're shiny and they're polished. So they're ready to stamp and go.
Okay, and what about the hammer?
Okay, with the hammer, what I like the best about metal stamping and using a brass head hammer is that it absorbs the shock.
Nice.
So then we're going to take our enamel marker. So this is paint enamel, and I'm just going to color in the impression that I stamped.
And this is like a faux patina kind of technique here, right?
Yes, pretty much. So I like to rush it and wipe it off really quick, but you're really supposed to let it sit for a couple of minutes.
Let it dry a little bit.
Let it dry a little bit, not be so. I like to jump the gun and wipe it off really quick. But you're gonna then just, what I like to do is to dab it a little bit with your paper towel, and then lightly wipe.
Well, that cleans up really easily. So do you have to seal this at all?
So you don't have to seal this. It dries in the impression, and it will stay there.
Very good.
So you see that we have all of our serifs in there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to dap it.
Oh, wait, I'm going to stop you right there because I have to grammar nerd out for a second.
Okay.
Not everyone knows what a serif is.
Oh, so a serif is what is on the edges of your font.
So like when you have little feet.
With little feet.
Yeah.
Or little hands.
So sans serif is without.
So sans serif is without. So
I
a
love
typewriter font. Oh, you're a font geek. Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah. So A typewriter font has feet and hands.
Got it.
Sans serif, nothing. Okay, so then we're going to take our dapping block. And I want it concave, so I want it that the H is on the bottom and it's cupping around the sides. So I'm gonna make sure that when I put it in my dapping block, I'm gonna put it with the impression facing the ceiling. Then I'm gonna take my punch, put it right in the center, hold it at the base, and give it 2 nice hits. And then I'm gonna pull it out, and I'm gonna see if I like
Makes it a little more dimensional.
if I like the dimension. If I want it a little bit more concave, I'm gonna put it right back in there, give it 2 more taps, and then I'm gonna bring it back, and I'm happy with the finished product.
Okay.
So that's another part of a dangle that I have. And now,
All right, so far we've done texturing, and we've done stamping, and dapping. I mean, we're getting a lot of techniques here in one project.
You definitely are. And now we're gonna do, what I like is a constellation. So what I'm gonna use is, again, the aluminum blank. And this time I'm gonna use a sticker guide. So I'm just gonna peel that sticker guide off. And what's great about sticker guides is they go right over your blank. And not only does it stick to the metal, but it also sticks to your bench block.
Okay, so this is a pre-made piece that you're using to help you design, right?
Yes. So this already has the design on it. So I'm just going to follow the pattern on there.
Okay. But could you also create your own design?
You can create your own design. This is actually a Leo constellation. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a dot stamp, and I'm gonna follow the pattern. So I'm going to lightly bring it down, find the dot on that sticker, take my hammer, give it a nice hit, and then pull my stamp off, and you're gonna see that it leaves an impression, and you're just gonna follow and give it a nice light tap. Nothing too overly aggressive.
Is that because it's just a single dot?
It's a single dot, and it's a very sharp stamp. So you wanna make sure to not overstamp it, because if you overstamp it, you go right through the metal.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
I love the idea of using constellations. I wouldn't have thought of that. That's neat.
It's very on trend.
Definitely.
It is.
And I like the Leo sign, you know.
Yeah, oh, of course.
That was a good choice.
So what helps a little bit is if you get a little lower to see where your dot is, and then you're gonna continue. What I'm gonna do for the last dot that I have here, I'm gonna use a burst. It's a radial design, and I'm gonna go around the last dot that I have there,
Okay, what made you decide to do that?
because I want to set a stone in that center.
Oh.
So I want to burst
I see.
from
So
the
it'll-
stone in the center. So I'm going to stamp my radial now. This one I'm going to give another tap to. Like I said before, with that 9.5 millimeter stamp, when you have a lot of lines and impressions on that stamp, you want to make sure that you're a little bit heavier with your hit to get all of that that detail in there.
So I think it takes a little bit of practice. There's a lot of nuance to using different sizes of stamps.
Right, it does. 3 millimeter are very easy to use. The higher that you get, the more hit you need, and maybe a little bit more finesse with the tilt and tap that I've showed you with the big initial stamp.
Okay.
So after I'm done with my burst, I'm going to take my sticker off, and then I'm going to come back in with my crystal setter.
Is that a special stamp that you have?
So this is a special stamp, and it's grinded down all around to 1.8 millimeter. And we're gonna fit a crystal right inside of that impression once it's stamped. So it leaves a really nice indentation, so that crystal sets right inside of it, just like that.
So this is only for this tiny crystal that you're using,
So
right?
this is for this only, yeah, this small crystal.
Okay.
And then what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take my enamel marker again. I'm going to lightly fill in my impressions. I'm going to go around that crystal stamp that I made in the center and just go over the outside of it.
You don't want to get any
I don't want to get
of the marker inside there because it will prevent
of the glue. It will prevent the glue from drying. So again, I'm just going to let it sit. I want to make sure that that ink really gets in those impressions.
Okay.
And I'm going to dab it again. And then lightly wiping. Sometimes it likes to stay, but if you use a little elbow grease, it'll come off.
Okay. It looks like you got a really good results with paper towels.
Really?
But you could use a polishing pad.
You could use a polishing pad. With the polishing pad, I would wait a little bit longer to wipe it off because sometimes it pulls it. That polishing pad will pull the ink out of the impression.
Okay.
So
paper towel is really the best.
Paper towel is the best. Once it's dry, then polishing, you could use your polishing pads to take any kind of tarnish or polishing pad to buff it out or shine it up.
Okay.
Also. What's good about the aluminum is that it's a food grade aluminum, so it's not going to tarnish, it's not going to turn you different colors, and the shine stays. So you'll never have to worry about it dulling.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's sort of like the pots and pans that you cook
That
with.
makes sense.
So what we're going to do now is that we're going to take a little bit of glue.
All right, and you're just using jeweler's cement.
And I'm just jeweler's cement. Doesn't need to want to open. Okay, there we go. I'm just going to take a little bit of it, just a bead. And you're going to take it and you're going to lightly place some inside of that crystal, the cavity that crystal setter created. You want to make sure to put your cap back on. There you go, if you could do that.
Sure.
Thanks, Katie. And then you're going to take your crystal and you're going to place that crystal right inside of that channel.
Okay.
Just
So you want to make sure that the pointed part is...
yes, you want to make sure that the
face down.
faceted part is facing you and the flat is inside of that cavity. So just like that. And what I like to do is I like to take my towel and just go around it to remove any of the excess glue that's there.
That looks great.
I love it. And
Now,
then
I'm noticing you don't have a hole punched in here.
no, I don't have a hole punched in this. So we're gonna take this blank and we're gonna actually place it inside of a bezel.
Oh, okay.
Yep, so this too is aluminum.
I bet you want your glue.
And I do want my glue back.
There you go.
Thank you very much. And what I like to do is just do little dots, one at the top, the bottom, and on each side of it. There
Is
you
that
go.
just to make sure that you don't get too much?
So you make sure you don't get too much because you don't want any spillage over the side of the bezel. And by doing it like that, it just guarantees that you're not going to have any pouring out. So you're just going to put a light touch on it,
Okay.
and then you let it sit until it dries. And there is your bezel with your crystal.
Perfect.
Very easy technique, and it creates something so beautiful.
Yeah, definitely, and very customizable. I love it.
Definitely. Now, I showed you how to stamp the initial, which was a 9.5. When you're working with smaller discs, it's a little bit more challenging. So what I like to do is I like to line up my center. Here, we're gonna do 2 initials and an ampersand in the center. So I like to take my ampersand, and I always like to stamp that first. I work on my small disc, I work from my center out. So I'm going to take my ampersand, and it just happens to be that my stamps here are marked, so I know exactly that I'm stamping in the right direction by the the marks on the front of my stamp.
So you always make sure that your thumb is on the same side as the marking, right?
Mhm. That's how you know you're stamping perfectly, because sometimes when they're not marked and you get to the middle of the name, it's backwards, upside down, and then you have to start from
It's
scratch.
frustrating.
You can't erase stamping.
That's true.
Can't erase it unless you want a texture over the entire blank.
What do you tell people about practicing?
So what I like to do is I would take a sheet of aluminum, which is soft and it's easy to stamp, and I would just go A through Z.
Just
Over and over.
Till you get the hang of it.
To learn your tools, know the stamps that you're working with. You know, it's a craft. So the more you work with your tools, the better you become at them. You know which
True.
ones you have to tilt a certain way, how to pull back a certain way. So it's really, the important thing about metal stamping is just knowing your tools and knowing the letter sets
I never
that you're
thought
working
about
with.
stamping out the alphabet. That's a really good idea, and I think every time you get a new font,
Right.
you know, you might want to do that because it would have a different feel.
It does have a different feel, and they move differently. So the font that we're using is more of a whimsical font, so it sways. So if you're dropping a letter and not really stamping straight, it's very forgiving. Something with sans serifs or something without a sans serif wouldn't be as forgiving as a whimsical font would be.
Oh, that makes sense.
So we're going to come right back through, get that right in the center, firmly place my hand, give it a nice tap, and my ampersand is now right underneath my tag, okay, where my hole is.
Okay.
And then what I like to do is I like to go, start on my left, and line that right up. And then,
That looks good so far.
yeah. And then, so you could see, you always want to overlap when you're stamping.
What do you
want to
mean?
make sure, so with your stamp, you always want to make sure that the impression that is on the left side of it, that you're covering it a tiny bit with your next initial,
Oh,
okay? So that's going to ensure that your spacing's perfect,
that's a great tip.
okay? And then you're going to take your enamel marker again, and you're going to color that in.
That looks good. And you even have room. I mean, if you wanted to, you could even do a crystal set on
You
this.
could do a crystal set on that. What I like to do on this one, I like to add little things to embellish it. You could take your bullet peen hammer again, like we did on the first step, and you could just go right around the edge.
Oh, yeah, that looks good.
Look how pretty that is. So going around the edge adds that extra diamond cut look.
Definitely.
So again, placing your finger where you feel comfortable, or you could also use a kind of tape and tape the blank down to the block in case you're a little unsure of hitting your fingers.
Yeah, I'm sure once you've done enough stamping, that becomes kind of common.
I always say, after your first blood blister, you're good to go. You won't hit
Yeah,
your hands
right.
again after the first time.
You will never be
That's
shocked
done.
again.
Exactly. So that is really pretty. It's got 2 initials on it, an ampersand, and then it's texture around the edge.
That looks great.
Now, my favorite is doing full names.
Why
Okay?
do you love it so much?
So I just like how fluid it is. It's more of not a repetitious pattern, but it leaves such a personal effect in a piece of jewelry that you've created, whether you're using someone's name or a
word.
quote, or a word. So what I like to do is I like to use a sticker guide, and I write my name, the quote, the word that I like on the sticker, and then I can position it on the metal where I would like it to go. And this is also a sticker, so it's gonna stick to your blank and also adhere
To the
the
block.
block, so it keeps it nice and stable. So I'm gonna do this on the end.
And we should mention, I don't think we talked about the steel block. There's also a rubber
Yes.
foot here that absorbs some of the
It absorbs
blow.
the blow and the noise.
Very good.
So here, now, what we're using is a script font. So this font could either be made to connect, or it could be done separately.
Oh.
Each initial at a time. I'm going to connect them. So I'm going to start with my uppercase. And what I did here, how I wrote the letter out is, on these sticker guides, there are little hash marks, okay? When you're using a 3mm, you want to go in between these lines. And if you run your finger down that, Katie. Do you feel that it creates a ledge?
Yes.
That ledge, when you hit it with your stamp, when your stamp hits that ledge, it creates more of a signal for you so you know that you're ready to go, as opposed to not having anything there and your letters being all uneven. This is going to make sure that you're nice and straight and that your spacing is perfect.
Okay.
So I'm going to start. Again, I want to make sure that the impression and the indentation is towards me. I'm going to take this down. I'm going to lightly drag it. And the reason why I lightly drag it is because I want to feel it grab the shelf of that sticker. Then I'm going to firmly place my hand and plant it on that bench block, and I'm going to push in, put pressure on my stamp into the metal. Then I'm going to take my hammer and give it a nice tip. And there we go. There's our cue. So here we go. So then we're going to do the same thing. Place it down, lightly drag it. Once we feel that restriction in the metal, we're going to give it a nice hit, and then we're going to finish up our name.
You make it look really easy. I know you've been stamping for a long time.
I've been stamping for a very long time, but I have to tell you that, you know, practice makes perfect, and it's all about learning the tools that you're using.
Sure, makes sense.
And then I'm going to continue. Again, place it flat, lightly drag it, overlapping. Always, even though I have that sticker guide, I always want to make sure that that my stamp itself is overlapping the last letter that I stamped. There's my I.
Do you think that some words are easier than others? Require more practice to stamp?
I don't know if it is the word. I think it's the font. A script font, like I said before, is a little bit more challenging than a up and down font would be.
So somebody who's never stamped before might.
I would go with a whimsical font, something that sways. Because if it sways, if you're uneven or you're dropping a letter, it kind of still looks really nice. Yeah, it covers it up. When you say
sway, you mean like a little bit of lean to
a little bit of
letters,
lean, right? More of like a handwriting, yes.
Okay.
So sometimes when we stamp into metal, it leaves a little bowing effect.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what I like to do, and because it's soft.
Sure.
And I tend to be heavy-handed, so I'm going to turn that over, and I'm going to use the back side of my hammer.
Just
I'm just going to gently give it a nice tap, and that brings it right back.
That's pretty amazing.
The way it was.
I wish all mistakes were that easily corrected. Not mistake, but you know.
Right.
Issues.
Then issues. Then we're going to fill that in again.
This is awesome. I can't believe how many different things you've shown us all in this short amount of time.
It's definitely, it's a craft. It's dear to my heart, and I thoroughly enjoy it. So you see here that it could be a standalone or it could be connected. And then we have that.
Nice.
Right there.
Very good.
So we've covered texturing, dapping, crystal setting, stamping without stickers, and stamping with stickers.
We've got it all right here.
Yes, we do.
So when you're assembling pieces like this together, like in this necklace, for example, here you combine some different colors of metal together, which I love.
Yes.
I think is so fun. And you've really got this trend of layering. Mm-hmm. I think that's your personal trend anyway.
Yes, I layer everything.
Yeah, but this looks great. So when you're attaching these kinds of dangles to stamped pieces, basically you're using jump rings?
I'm using jump rings. I'm using twisted jump rings. I'm using plain jump rings. You could use split rings if you'd like. It's really personal preference. Jump rings come more designed nicely. They have a nice design than the twisted ones. So it's really personal preference.
All right, well, thank you so much, Rita. This was a great project. We learned so much.